foon klim en dan net luister weer na julle.
Dis 100%. Hallo
Right,
Anja.
Johan, die recording is aan die gang, jy kan laat waai, hoor.
Okay, ja, ek is reg. Jou kan net sy video afsit. Okay. Hearty good evening. Ryan, can you see the screen?
What's checking for you? 1 second, just got myself slightly distracted.
Oh,
I see it. I see
okay.
it.
So screen is shared. It's fine. We can kick off. Okay. Tuesday was quite a heavy meeting, a heavy lecture. Digital electronics is not the easiest to understand if you haven't worked with it before. So I hope everything started making sense after you read through your manual again after Tuesday. I'm going to just finish off a last slide that ties in with our lecture on digital electronics from Tuesday. Let me just get you to the screen. There we go. Okay. I got a nice news bulletin from a company called Lime Microsystems, which I've dealt with before. They are sort of leaders in the upper market SDR radio field. Just out of interest, so that you understand let's say the easiness of digital electronics. This is the latest and greatest SDR transceiver. 30 megahertz to 3 gigahertz. And if you look carefully, you'll see that it has got the same size as a M.2 NMVE 2280 SD drive. So this thing is 80 millimeters long by 30 millimeters wide. On this side, if you go back to the block diagrams we did on Tuesday, so the transceiver chip, the radio chip, sits under the shield. Here is the reference oscillator, high stability reference oscillator. This block here is the DDS, the direct digital synthesizer we spoke about on Tuesday. Underneath, and unfortunately they didn't have in the news announcement, they didn't have a picture of the bottom, but on another place I saw that underneath this PC board sits the FPGA that controls the whole radio. And here on the end, you can see there's a little microchip emblem. This is a microprocessor that handles the communications, the housekeeping between your computer and the transceiver. So this is what it's moving towards from those bulky old 100 kilogram radios. It's moving to a thing which is 80 millimeters long by 30 millimeters wide. Just out of interest, so that's the latest and the greatest which has come out. Let me just shut this radio down. Don't need interference. Okay. Tonight is a fun night. We're talking digital communications. Now, people will argue, is it digital communications always? The way to look at the definition of it, anything that talks zeros and ones is digital communications. Remember our binary logic, Boolean algebra from Tuesday? Computers talk zeros and ones. So when we talk digital communications, it means that it is in fact actually computers talking to each other. You are just the operator of the mode, or the operator of the radio that's talking zeros and ones over the air. It is broken down into 3 different modes, which we will look at tonight. The first one we call text mode. So it's pretty much keyboard to keyboard communications. I press A on my keyboard and you receive A on the other side. We're going to look at the imaging modes we use in amateur radio, what is available to us. Also, it's digital. And then we're going to end off the evening with digital voice, which is becoming the big thing. Once you become amateur, you'll hear there's some very big enemies of digital voice on the repeater. People that hate it with a passion, but it is the future. Modes of amateur radio is digital voice. Okay, so that's the 3 topics for discussion. Now, if we talk keyboard to keyboard, there was a clever guy by the name of Emile Baudot. Some call it Baudot, but the French never pronounce the T, so it's Baudot. In the 1870s, he came up with a way of representing letters and numbers. The letters A to Z, or A to Z, and 0 to 9. He came up with a way to represent them when you transmit them. Remember, up to this point, 1870, the only way you could have communicated with the radio was CW, Morse code. So this guy came along with a code he called Baudot. It was a 5-bit code, so the 32 symbols was represented by a 5-bit code, zeros and ones, 5 of them, representing the 32 symbols. Okay, and there was a letters and a figures mode. This was good. Those of you that are slightly older will remember years ago, you had to go to the post office to go and send a telex. You wrote your message on a piece of paper and you went off to the post office and you asked the post office to telex a message for you, and you gave them the telex number of the other side, and off went the telex. And if somebody sent you a telex, the postman on his bicycle would come running, driving along to your property, and he handed you a piece of paper which had tape stuck on. It looked like somebody stuck sellotape on this piece of paper, but there was your message. That was telex. That was using the Baudot code to transmit 32 different symbols. In 1963, the clever guys came up with a new system which they called ASCII, which stands for American Standard Code for Information Interchange. It's still in use today, even after it was designed in 63, it's still in use. It's a 7-bit code, and it represented initially 128 characters, of which 95 was printable characters. In other words, ABC, lowercase, uppercase, and 33 control characters. In the 80s, it was extended to ASCII extended, and it was extended yet again. So nowadays, you get different pages of ASCII code, but amateur radio primarily still uses just the original 128 characters of ASCII code when we do digital communications. This is what it looks like. Okay, going back to your lecture of Tuesday night, this should come back quickly now. If I want to send the letter 0 or the number 0 to somebody else, the binary number, where's my cursor now? Sorry, let's get my cursor back. I would send 0, 1, 1, 0, 0, 0, 0 to the other side. So if we look at how we do digital communications text-based, for example, and this is not just a rough example to make it understandable for you, for the first second of my transmission, I would transmit, for example, 10 megahertz. Okay. The next second of my transmission, I would transmit 10,1 megahertz. The third second of my transmission, I'll transmit 10,1 megahertz. Then next second, I will be on 10 megahertz. This cursor is giving me uphill. Then I'll go back to 10 megahertz, 10 megahertz, 10 megahertz, 10 megahertz. This is now if I use something like audio frequency shift keying, AFSK. That's how it effectively in basic principles work. So in other words, if I want to send the letter Z, for the first second, I'll transmit on 10 megahertz. Next second, I'll transmit on 10.1. Then the next second, sorry, first one I'll do 10.1. The next one I'll be back at with 10. Then 10.1, 10.1, 10, 10.1, 10. Okay, so that's how I sent the binary number that represents Z over the air. I'm saying a second. In real life, it's a lot quicker. But just for explanation so that you understand or get an idea of how it works. At regular intervals, I change my frequency depending if it is a 1 or a 0, or a 1 or a 1 or a 0. Okay. So that's how the ASCII code works. If you count all these numbers, you'll see it's 0 to 9, all the uppercase letters, all the lowercase letters, and a lot of control characters. So, just going back here, we don't really use Baudot anymore, but it was in general use with amateur radio well into the 70s, and then it was superseded by using ASCII. And this is how I represent my letters and numbers in ASCII code. Now we're going to look at text-based amateur radio again. And I've just put CW there because the old wimmies, they still use a Morse key to do CW. The younger generation are using programs, software, and a computer to do CW. So although it is not really a text-based mode in the true sense, modern amateur radio has made it into software, not a Morse key anymore. So I'm leaving it there, and I've made it yellow because it's sort of a crossbreed mode nowadays. Then RTTY, which was the first Baudot based way of communicating, was used. Then it was superseded by Amtor, it was superseded by Pactor, and it was superseded by Clover. So in all these cases, they took the bad of RTTY and they created Amtor, took the bad out of it and made Pactor, and so they went on. Pretty much obsolete in amateur radio nowadays. You battle to find amateurs still operating these modes. Most probably the most used one at the moment still in amateur radio, if you can find someone who's RTTY. But the other digital modes is pretty much disappeared because it's been superseded by these blue ones, which have got a lot of advantages over the green ones. There we've got FSK 441, which is a Earth-Moon-Earth communications method. So what I do is I bounce my signals off the moon, and somebody else receives it on the other half of the Earth, and we can send a message by bouncing stuff from the surface of the moon. JT65, quite a popular one in use nowadays. They use it for tropospheric scatter, they're using it for meteor scatter, and they're using it for aircraft scatter. So what's the difference? It's still bouncing off stuff, but what happens with tropospheric scatter, there's anomalies, or there's let's call it spots developing on the ionosphere. I can't remember which lecture you did propagation, but you should have done the ionospheres, the different layers, and as the sun shines, some of them get amplified, and when the sun goes down, some of them combine with others. But when you get a reject spot on the troposphere, there's a reflection that occurs. So again, you're using it as a mirror. You send your signal up to it, and you get a signal coming back, and somebody else receives it, and you've made a contact. Meteor scatter happens mostly certain times of year, and it happens only in certain parts of the world when there's meteorites which enter the Earth's atmosphere, and they create these streams of fireworks and sparks as they burn up in our Earth's atmosphere. And believe me, if you read The Clever Guys, there's always meteors around the world somewhere that burns up in the atmosphere. Again, while this meteorite is busy burning up in the atmosphere, you can reflect your radio waves off it and you can receive it somewhere else in the world. A popular one which guys like to experiment with, they use aircraft as a reflector. And also the aircraft creates quite a dense change in the Earth's atmosphere in the area behind the aircraft. So you've got quite a large area, not only the aircraft, but the let's call it the plumes of the engines behind the aircraft that creates a good mirror for you to send stuff back to Earth. Okay, that's JT65. Then Whisper is used for weak signal propagation. So there's lots of guys in the world, they're continuously transmitting beacons. And you can go to a website and you can see where all these beacons have been picked up and received in the world. A lot of guys that are quite eager, they want to work. Let's take an example. Somebody in South Africa really wants to work some weird and wonderful island sitting in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, but there's only one amateur on that island, so they've got to find the right time of day, the right conditions for the amateur to work that funny island in the middle of the Pacific. You would rely on the Whisper data to give you an idea of when would be the most appropriate time to work that funny island in the Pacific. Then the ones which is becoming absolutely incredibly popular, it's overtaken Morse code by tens of folds in terms of popularity, is your FT2, FT4, and FT8. FT8 is mostly used on HF, high frequency digital comms. FT4 and FT2 is used, FT2 and FT4 especially for satellite comms where you don't have a lot of time, because when you have a QSO on FT8, it would take you minimum 2 minutes to do a QSO on FT8. If you use FT4, it will be less than half the time. And FT2, within 15 seconds, you would have a full QSO with somebody else at the rate at which it operates. So when you start your hobby, these are the popular ones which you find thousands and thousands of amateurs around the world which make use of them. Okay, let me just take a breath and ask if there's any questions.
So far, all good. Thank you.
Okay. This is what if we just go back here, these blue ones that I've given you, yeah. This is what the software looks like that you use to do those blue modes. You'll see at the moment it's selected on FT8. And this is now the interesting thing. You see my frequency, I'm on 7.075 megahertz. But if you count, there's approximately 40 guys busy having a QSO on one single frequency. Okay? One thing, it's like 40 people talking simultaneously in a room, in one single room. And that's what makes these digital modes so popular. Each one of these red lines you see here is a QSO Okay, for those that haven't studied the Q codes in the regulations yet, QSO is a contact, a conversation. Okay, so each one of these red lines you see here is a conversation, a QSO, which is busy happening. And you can count them. You'll get to about 40 of them, which is happening simultaneously. Now, again, this is one of the things to look at that influences your decision when you become an amateur. Do you want to buy a new fancy radio or an old radio? Typically, you'll see there's a lot of QSOs from 500 hertz to roughly 2.4 kilohertz. This is typically old radios because that's the best they could do. These guys sitting this side and even up to 3.5 kilohertz sometimes, and even the guys sitting below 500 hertz is the guys with the new radios. Now, if I wanted to start a conversation, in other words, I want to ask somebody, can you hear me? I would must probably pick a frequency around 600 hertz because you can see here there's no red lines here. This one is also there, perhaps not as good, but you could also sit at 1.2 kilohertz, or you could sit here at 2 to 5 kilohertz. There's a good clean spot there as well. So you'll learn these things when you start the hobby, where to put your transmit signal, because now remember, it doesn't help putting your transmit signal here. If you transmit on top of a current conversation, nobody's going to hear you. But this is just out of interest. This is what digital modes is about. So I'm sending messages. There's somebody calling here, for example. This guy is calling CQ. It means he wants to talk to someone. His call sign is Oscar Zulu 6, Alpha Bravo Lima. He's in JO55 in terms of his grid locator, and his country is Denmark. Okay. On this side is the QSOs that you are busy having. So this side you see everybody. So all 40 of these will be listed on this side. And then when you're busy having a conversation, a QSO with someone, it will appear on this side for you. So just out of interest. So this is digital modes. Hey, it's good fun. Some people say it's not amateur radio. Yeah, let's not go there. Okay, so there is software for the green ones as well. What's just fun with the green ones is a lot of the weather pictures which is sent out to the maritime industry or the maritime ships on sea is still done on RTTY. There's fixed frequencies on HF where they transmit weather maps continuously. So if you want a synoptic chart of some place, there's a frequency that you'll find that is transmitted from Cape Town by Portnet. They would send synoptic maps all the time on RTTY out to all the ships and fishing vessels out at sea. Because remember, a fishing vessel doesn't necessarily have a satellite system like a big container ship. So a lot of maritime traffic still relies on RTTY for synoptic charts. But there is software for the green stuff, but what I've shown you is typically the software for the blue stuff. Okay, so this was what I called reactive. Why do I say, let me just go back, sorry. Why do I say reactive? All these modes, I would send out a CQ. I would ask for somebody, can you hear me? Is there somebody out here there that receives my signal? And somebody would answer me back. Okay, so that's why they're reactive. Where if we go to the proactive text modes, there's 4 of them that I've listed for you: packet, radio, APRS, DPRS, and VARA. All these modes, you physically connect to somebody or someone or something. Okay. Packet radio, I decide I want to connect to ZS6HFE, and I create a packet radio connection from my station to ZS6HFE station. APRS as well, it's positioning beacons, which I'll show you some pictures. APRS as well, I have to connect to an APRS digipeater, which then relays my position to a server somewhere in the world for logging purposes. The same with DPRS, which is the digital version of it. I have to go via a digipeater or via a digital repeater that then relays my position to a server somewhere in the world, and yeah, I can see it. VARA is the same thing. It's a high-speed mode for email, SMSs, and chat. The same thing, if you want to SMS somebody, you're going to say, I want to send an SMS to 083111111. The same with VARA. I have to tell it who I'm sending an SMS to. If I want to chat to someone, I must tell VARA, I want to chat to ZS6HFE. Emails, it's obvious. You have to give an email address, and that email goes to that email address. So these are proactive, I call them proactive text modes. I use them to physically connect to someone or something. This is a map of APRS, what you can get from your APRS software that I pulled this morning to fit into the slides for you. You can see here, there's an amateur that resides here, ZS6 Golf Romeo. There's another amateur which has got his home there, ZS6 Tango Alpha. There's some repeaters here, they're unfortunately on top of each other. There's a guy driving with his car here, ZS6 Sierra Julia Charlie. He's driving his car somewhere there in Walmer. There's a repeater that's sitting over here, and there's another amateur that's residing over here. Here's a weather station. There's another weather station. And here's another amateur, ZS6 ETA. So what happens with all these people, for example, I can tell you that Golf Romeo and Andre and these repeaters, they are all putting out DPRS beacons, which is logged in the servers worldwide for where they are. This guy is most probably transmitting analog APRS. What I could also do if I'm in the software, and this is obviously not live software, but if I'm live in the software, I can double click on this guy's icon and I can send him a chat message. I can say, hi Ryan, how are you, man? And he should be getting, if he's got the software open on his screen, on his side, he should be getting a pop-up from me to say, hello, how are you? So I can send short messages with APRS and DPRS as well. So if I'm in the software, I just click on it and I go, or right click on it and I say send message, and off the message goes. So that's typically what APRS and DPRS gives you. It's all digital modes. Everything is done as zeros and ones. This is VARA, a very nice piece of software, which a bunch of guys have developed. This one, because I was a bit too slow, there's nothing happening much on it at the moment. But you can see here, I can send files, I can broadcast, my messaging is here. There's so many different things I can do. And if this is running on my PC, then I'll be getting a message to say you've got an email and you can read the email. So that's the way it's all going. It's digital. Some people hate it. They want to have a microphone in the hand and nothing else, just the microphone in the hand or a Morse key. Okay, imaging modes. In amateur radio, we've got 4 main modes, of which one is becoming obsolete. We've got facsimile, which is the sending of text or low resolution images. not used much in amateur radio anymore, although you still find some guys. The Germans love it. There's quite a lot of German stations which still like sending facsimile stuff over the amateur radio frequencies. A lot of commercial traffic on facsimile, but not that popular anymore. The other one which is very popular is slow scan television. It's used for photos, color or black and white photos. Doesn't matter, and I can send these photos, and anybody that receives it will get it on their screen. For example, the International Space Station is continuously transmitting slow scan photos, slow scan TV photos of the space station, which can be received on Earth and decoded on Earth. So a lot of guys is doing slow scan TV receptions for this, the ISS sake. Then we had fast scan TV. It's pretty much obsolete because it's been replaced by digital amateur television. As you know, if you used to high definition DSTV, then SABC 1, 2, and 3 on antenna facing a tower somewhere really looks bad. So fast scan TV is pretty much been replaced by digital amateur TV, and that is real-time video. DVS, DVB-S or DVB-S2 is used by the amateurs. For example, your DSTV also uses DVB-S2. So we're using the latest and the greatest methods of encoding and decoding video signals, but we're transmitting it via amateur radio frequencies. Okay, those are the imaging modes. Just some samples for you. Here's a picture from the space station. So typically there's quite a couple of software packages you can use, just one of them. So yeah, you can see the two astronauts in the space station, and they've sent some slow scan pictures of what it is like on the space station. It is really low speed transmission, so quality is not always spectacular. You can see there's some lines coming through. Resolution is not great, but it is slow scan TV. It serves a purpose. It's very nice. Okay, something to try. Now you compare it to this. This is DITV. Look at the image. It's like being a DSTV station on the amateur radio frequencies. Everything is software driven. As you can see, the difference in software. This side is my decoding that I have to set up. Symbol rates. There's hundreds of things you have to learn to do, but this is your receive side, which you set up your decoding. And this side is my transmission side, where I set up what I want to transmit. So it's used from UHF band up. At the moment, mostly used on satellites, where it's good fun sending video pictures to each other of your radio station, etc. But you can see the difference in quality between slow scan TV and DITV. Okay, I just want to take some water. Any questions? Okay. These are all things you can play with when you're a radio amateur. Good fun, really good fun. One of the first things you invest in when you become an amateur is a good SDR radio. Okay, now we're going to a mixture of analog, sorry, a mixture of analog and digital. These are modes which was developed by amateurs to make, well, I won't say to to get rid of HF, but to overcome some of the issues with HF where you have to wait until a certain time of day before you can speak to the USA, or a certain time of day before you can listen to Japan, etc. So what they've done is they developed digital systems which connects the analog repeaters together. Now, one of the first ones that came into existence was IRLP. It stood for Internet Radio Linking Project. Some Canadian guys, excellent, clever guys. They came up with a system where you would put a little computer box, Linux computer, next to your analog repeater. And when somebody on the repeater punched the DTMF code on the keypad, I hope you all know what DTMF codes is. If you've still got an old telephone, when you used to press those buttons, it made these funny noises. Ching, 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 ching. Those are DTMF codes. So what you could do is you could punch a DTMF code in your microphone and it would connect you to a repeater somewhere else in the world. And if you knew the repeater number of your buddy in Canada, his local repeater, you could connect your Pretoria repeater to the Canadian repeater and you can have a conversation without relying on propagation on HF. It was later superseded by Echolink, which is incredibly popular. To me, to the detriment of Echolink, they came up with an Android client for cell phones, which allows you to connect to repeaters with your cell phone. Majority of users doing that never set their cell phones settings correctly, so they sound like horrible when they're using their cell phone to do Echolink. But you could also link repeaters together, and if you know the telephone number or the Echolink number of the repeater you want to connect to, you would punch it in on your microphone's DTMF keypad, and it would connect you to another place or another person on the other side of the world. Then came along All-Star. It's gaining popularity a lot. Reason for it being is that it is a much better audio quality than Echolink, and it's got a lot more functionality than what Echolink has got. But it's effectively the same system or a similar system. It connects users and repeaters together from anywhere in the world. Then the one which is actually banned from most repeaters is Zello. It also exists, but I've put it up here because we get a lot of questions about it, and it's pretty much banned by most repeater clubs because Zello cannot guarantee that it is a radio amateur that is talking. All three of these systems, IRLP, Echolink, and All-Star, you have to register, supply a copy of your ICASA license, etc., before you can use the system or the network. Zello is a free for all for free story. So because it cannot guarantee that it's only amateurs, it's banned in some countries and by a lot of repeater operators. Okay, so these are analog front ends. In other words, you still use an analog radio, but in the background behind the analog radio, there's a computer that turns it into digital information, and the digital information gets sent via the internet to somewhere else in the world. That's why it's got a place here. What's the time? Okay. Sorry, wrong way. Now we get to the last bit of digital communications, and this is the future stuff, which is making some people angry, is digital voice. So in other words, if we go to our block diagrams of an SDR, my microphone is digitized sort of immediately when it goes into the radio. And from there on, everything is digital. The transmission over the air is digital. The transmission to the internet is digital. If I want to listen to something, it's digital information that comes in, goes through the FPGA, goes through the digital to analog converter, and only the last bit from the digital to analog converter to the speaker is analog. And it's because us humans are stupid, we cannot talk digital, so we need analog to hear. And that's why it's still got a speaker and a microphone. The red ones were designed exclusively for amateur radio use. D-Star Fusion M17 was developed specifically for amateur radio use. So some of the functions that's available in these digital modes is exclusive to amateur radio. The green ones was actually developed for commercial use, not for amateur radio, but for commercial use. But now what has happened is, and that's why I've made it red and green, because these are exclusively designed for amateur radio, the radio equipment that uses these modes are quite pricey. You can imagine for yourself, if you sell 10,000 radios compared to 1 million radios, there's going to be a price difference. The manufacturers can't make 10,000 radios for the same price that they make 1 million radios for. So although it's good modes, the radio equipment is quite pricey because it's exclusively amateur radio. Because these are commercial, the radios are relatively cheap, very cheap. And what has happened is the Chinese are excellent characters. They've managed to take these commercial radio standards and turned them into amateur radios and made it even cheaper. But we'll get to that towards the end of the course. If we just look typically at quality and users, so if you look at the websites where you have to register, because remember all these digital modes, because they connect you to somewhere else in the world where there's also radio amateurs. These guys that operate these networks, they want to make sure you're an amateur. So they have these websites where you register yourself and you get a unique ID which is programmed into your radio. So if you look at the registered IDs, DMR has by far got the most users of all the modes. It is really, there is a lot more. I had a look 2 weeks ago and there was 368,000 registered users on the DMR database. 368,000 users registered. Second is D-Star, and then third is NXDN, which is gaining a lot of popularity. And the reason why NXDN is becoming more and more popular, if you look at this, it is really the Rolls-Royce in terms of audio quality. D-Star has got good quality, but NX beats it, and DMR is the third one in the queue in terms of quality. And this is not me saying this. This comes from many guys that have done a lot of studies in the world. So that's the digital modes, but why have we got so many? Don't ask me why. It's just, yeah. You put 3 people on an island and within a week you'll have 3 churches and 3 schools and yeah, everything else. What is the difference between them? Why do they exist? Okay, just out of interest sake, NXDN uses frequency division multiple access. Okay. DMR uses TDMA, time domain. and we don't have any amateur equipment that uses CDMA. This is typically in the cell phone domain, you would find CDMA. So yes, there's two different ways in which they communicate. Why am I saying this? On one single frequency, I can have two conversations in terms of amateur radio now. In terms of amateur radio, I can have two conversations on the same frequency happening simultaneously without them interfering with each other because it's digital. And the way they achieve that is in the one mode, they give a certain part of the frequency to the one channel, and they give a certain part of the frequency to the other channel. In DMR, they give a certain time period of the transmission to the first channel and a certain time period of the second channel. The second channel they put in a separate time period after the first one. So that's how you can have more than one conversation happening or simultaneously on the same frequency. Okay, all these digital modes uses something which they call a vocoder. Okay, the chip, the brain of all these digital modes is typically a thing which they call a vocoder. So what does the vocoder do? It receives my microphone signal or it outputs my speaker signal, and it has got some fancy algorithms. This is basically, in terms of what we discussed on Tuesday, this is a dedicated DSP. So in other words, this DSP has been developed and coded in such a way that its prime purpose in life is to encode the digital information that I receive from the microphone, encoded in a certain format. If you go back to our digital comms lecture a month ago, this FEC block should make a bit of sense to you. So it encodes it and it puts it out either on the internet or it transmits it out on a wireless link on a radio. And the same, it receives either a signal from the internet or a radio signal, and it converts it back into something which my digital to analog converter can put onto the speaker for me. So all these digital modes, they've got a dedicated DSP in, which is in fancy terms is called the vocoder chip. Okay. You can do some of the digital modes on your computer without owning a digital radio. There's three packages primarily which is being used by amateurs which don't have digital radios. The one is called Peanut, written by a Dutch guy, very clever. Then there's another one called Blue DV, also the same Dutch guy that wrote Peanut, wrote Blue DV. And then there's another one written by a bunch of Americans called DV Switch. And you could install these software packages and you can do digital modes on your computer. Limited in terms of Peanut. Blue DV, you need to plug a vocoder chip on your USB port of the PC. And the same with DV Switch, you need to put a vocoder chip on the USB port of your PC if you want to do the digital modes. Is that of interest, sake? This is what Blue DV looks like. Looks very complex, but it's straightforward and easy to use. It's like falling off a chair. So this there's a vocoder chip plugged onto the USB port of this computer. I've switched on my digital radio and I've selected to do fusion. I can also select to do D-Star or I can select DMR. So I've got to pick which one of the modes I want to do. This case, fusion is selected, which is also abbreviated as C4FM. And this guy's having a merrily conversation at the moment. He's transmitting because it's saying TX, and this guy's call sign is November 3 Zulu Bravo Lima, and his name is Kevin, and that's his ID. So this ID you cannot get if you're not a licensed radio amateur. Okay. The nice thing about digital radios, the moment somebody talks or you talk, the call sign and the name appears on the screen. So if you have these people that like playing test my press to test knob on the microphone, on digital radio you can see this who is playing, who doesn't know what to do. So you always know who's talking on the digital because this ID is like a phone number. Your phone number is registered, so everybody knows if this ID appears anywhere in the world on a repeater, that it's actually Kevin with this call sign that is busy talking. So it's good fun. Some people hate it. Some people say, again, it's not amateur radio. Let's not get into that debate, but it's the modern way to go. Henry and myself had a long chat about this today, so we'll cover some of this in the last lecture on the 12th of May when we do that lecture. I showed you the picture of the SDR up front. The reason why I did that is if you're a radio amateur, you can do a lot of things which most people either out there doesn't know about, or they don't have the skills, or they don't have the equipment to do it. But if you have a good SDR radio, there's some good fun stuff that you can take part in, which I've just listed here for you, and I'm going to show you some pictures of it. ADS-B is a data system which the aircraft use when they take off to give the altitude, blah, blah, blah. I'll show you on a picture what it looks like. So, and I said to you when we discussed filters, I can receive aircraft well past Malawi and up to Zambia. I can receive the ADS-B transmissions coming from these long-haul aircraft going overseas. Just because I've got an SDR receiver and I've got the software and I like playing. ACARS is another one, not very popular in this country. It's only the big aircraft that transmits ACARS. It gets transmitted on 136 megahertz, 9, something like that. Also an aircraft data system, but this is the system. Have you ever, if you think back flying, before the aircraft lands, it will tell you that it's going to be at gate 50 or whatever. It already knows where the aircraft's going to park. It's because there's text messages being sent between the tower and the aircraft, and a lot of these text messages are sent on ACARS. For example, if there's an emergency, there's some idiot that doesn't behave on the aircraft, the pilot would sometimes use the ACARS system to send a message to the tower rather than talking on the radio. So good fun to receive. WeatherFax, HPT, HRPT are all imaging software where you receive weather satellites. Man, there's about 50 weather satellites circling the Earth all the time. And there's some very clever amateurs overseas that have written some really awesome software for you to receive these pictures. So you can read your own weather. You can predict this cold front is still miles away from Cape Town. They're lying to you by receiving all these pictures from the weather satellite services. Last one, DAB Plus is a good one. South Africa is supposed to go digital for radio and television. I don't know when it will ever happen, but you can receive radio transmissions already on digital, where you, it's not analog, it's all digital. This is what DAB Plus looks like. I was when I captured this, I was just tuned in on Pretoria FM. Shows me it's transmitting on digital channel 13F, and this is just my signal strengths and stuff, and it's my Gauteng DAB plus transmission that I'm listening to. There's quite a lot of stations on DAB already. So instead of finding a radio to listen to, you just start the software on your computer. You've got a SDR receiver, and you just tell the SDR receiver, give me this DAB plus transmission. All good fun you can do as an amateur. This is ADSB, which we spoke about. Out of interest, I was looking for a good one to capture, but South Africa was very quiet when I was looking for a picture. But yeah, you can see this is flight MSC 826. It tells me that this aircraft's registration number is Sierra Uniform Bravo Uniform Uniform. It belongs to Egypt. It's an Airbus A320 and it's a type L2J. Ground speed currently when this ADSB signal was received was 464 knots. Altitude was 33,000 feet according to its barometric measurement. But then its true measurement was 35,000. It was flying flat, so it wasn't going up or down, and it was going at 138.9 degrees and its position. So these are all fun stuff you can look at when you've got aircraft all over the place. When we had quite a lot of planes leaving for the DRC early in the mornings, it was interesting to look at the ADSB data coming out of all those aircraft taking off from Waterkloof Air Force Base. And it's legal, you can do it. There's nothing illegal about it. Just another part of the hobby which is fun and interesting. Okay, then I'm going to shut down or close with this one. This is now digital radio at its best. I've got a satellite. In this case, I was connected to Oscar 100, amateur satellite 100, which is a stationary satellite on the equator. This is the window that gives me the beacon of the satellite. And these are all the people which is busy talking. If you look down here where it says narrowband digital, this is where they're busy doing FT8. Here's some guys which is doing Morse code, obviously. And these are all SSB signals of guys talking on the satellite at that point in time. And I'm locked onto this one. It tells me I'm on upper sideband. I've got quite a wide bandwidth because it's a good satellite. It's got a good transponder. The frequency I'm receiving is 10 gigahertz, 10.489 gigahertz. And yeah, I can change everything. This side is my transmit side. This side is my receive side. And let's see if the sound is good enough.
Yeah. Now I reduced the power a little bit. I reduced it, and so I hope I have no problems with the Lila, Andy. Yeah, it works very good from your side. Weather report here is very, very warm, this afternoon here in Germany. I'm located here in northern part of Germany, about 50 kilometers southeast of Hanover. And it's very warm, temperatures about 22 degrees centigrade. So how is the weather near south from Dublin?
Okay, could you hear the sound? I did share with sound, so I hope it came through. Henry, was the sound all right?
Ja, het lekker deurgekom.
Okay. So,
For those that do want to go more live into it, I found a person in the UK that has it on a web browser available that you can listen to Kia 100.
Yeah.
For those that do want to play in such case around.
Okay,
but it's sort of different. Yeah, sorry.
There's the answers to the questions in chapter 31. And that brings to the end my lecture on digital communications. I hope I've intrigued you enough so that you're going to write the exam. That's why I said tonight was a nice lecture. It's really the fun stuff of the hobby that we play with. Yes, talking on the microphone is also fun. I like talking to Marty, but sometimes you want to play with some technology as well.
Johan, dis so lekker. Ek skryf sommer weer my eksamen net om weer digitaal te gaan.
Yeah, so I'm done. If there's no questions, Henry, then it's back to you.
Nee, daar was nie geen vraag van my kant af nie, Johan. Dit was baie interessant geweest. En daar's geen ander vraag van amper sê van ons kliënte af nie. So dan gaan ek die opname stop.
Kom stop. Ek net iets on